Okay, everybody. Hi, and welcome to the Facebook Live. There we go. We're recording. Welcome to the replay if you're catching the replay. And I just wanted today have a question for you. So, if have you ever had the experience where you go to a holiday event and someone comes up to you and they might take a look at what's on your plate and say, is that all you're going to eat? Or maybe they'll say something like, why aren't you having the blank, right? Maybe it's the dessert or it's the champagne or it's whatever it may be. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you eating? And that can be a tough moment, right? And I think for a lot of us, there's a certain sense of it's almost like we have food shame, that we feel something is wrong with us, right? So, hi, everybody. If you're just watching for the first time, I'm Ricki Heller from rickiheller.com, and I help people with dietary restrictions learn to love their food again so they can eat delicious food and actually focus on healing and getting on with living their very best lives. Hey, welcome. So, today I wanted to talk to you about this topic that I'm calling food shame, but it's really about how do we handle all of these questions and this sort of curiosity and concern about what we're eating when we're trying to eat something that is healthy for us. And so I think the first thing to consider is I want to look at why people scrutinize our food, but I also want to look at why it hurts so much and why it feels like you're so on the spot and it's so difficult to answer the question. So I'm going to start with us, the people who have to deal with those kinds of questions, because if it hasn't happened to you yet, it probably will, I'll be honest. People just feel they have a right to say those kind of things. And particularly at the holidays, where you're surrounded by family and close friends and people who know you really well, those kinds of questions, hey, welcome, those kinds of questions can come up more and more often, right? So, why does it put you in this sort of defensive mode where suddenly you feel like you have to give an explanation as to why you're eating something? And I think it all boils down to how secure we are in our own conviction around what we're doing. In other words, if you are 100% secure and feel confident in what you're doing and that what you're doing is for your best health, then nobody's going to be able to shake that confidence when they ask you those kinds of questions. And to put that in context, sorry, I got a bit of a cold today, so I'm breathing through my mouth and I'm sounding a little bit congested. Put that in a little bit of context. If you were in a situation, let's say a similar party, and somebody came up to you and they said, hey, let's go snort some crack cocaine in the other room right now. Or if they said to you, why aren't you with all of us in that other room snorting that crack cocaine? Would you feel put upon? Would you feel that you had to explain why you weren't going to do it? Or would you feel confident in saying, no, thanks, not for me, I'm going to pass, thanks, right? And I mean, you can insert anything else in that situation that for you is an absolute definite no. So if someone questions your motivation or questions what you're doing in a situation where you are 100% grounded and firm in your conviction, that's not going to make you feel like you're doing something wrong. So if I'm at a party nowadays and everybody else is eating whatever, I'm going to say casseroles and bread pudding and whatever you want to, all the things that I can't eat, chocolate layer cake, whatever. And I've got a plate of broccoli and baby carrots and red peppers and some hummus. And if someone comes over to me and says, hey, like, why aren't you eating that stuff? I don't take that as an affront. I'm not immediately put on the defensive because to me, there's nothing to be defensive about in what I'm eating. I'll just say, well, I can't eat those things, or this is my diet, or even better, no explanation at all. I prefer not to have that. I'm just having this right now. And the fact is, your own response will immediately mitigate the way that someone else is going to talk to you. So if they can sense that you are secure and firm in your response, then they're not going to try to pursue it. And you're not going to get these persistent and scrutinizing questions that go on and on and on, like I used to get when I was first eating this way, right? So I would say, oh, well, I have candida and I just can't eat this. So I wish I could eat it, but I can't eat it. And they go, well, why not? I mean, oh, come on, candida, that isn't even a real thing. Of course you can eat, just have one bite. One bite's not going to hurt you. And I go, well, I don't really think I should. Oh, come on. Everybody's having the cake. One little bite, really? Like you're not going to celebrate the holiday with us? Are you crazy? What's the matter with you? And it would go on and on and on because I was trying to deflect what they were saying. And I was trying to sort of deflect the tension in the situation by sort of agreeing with them and trying not to offend them. And what that does is it just allows it to continue and spiral and spiral and spiral. So if you are good at cutting off any future discussion about it right from the get go, that's going to let people know that you believe what you're doing, you're firm in what you're doing, and that's the end of the discussion. If you were a type 1 diabetic who had to inject insulin every day and you said, I can't have sugar because I'm a diabetic, that's going to be the end of the discussion, right? Or if, excuse me, if someone offers an alcoholic a glass of wine and they say, sorry, I had to quit drinking 20 years ago, I've been sober for 20 years, they're not going to go, oh, come on, one sip isn't going to hurt you. Just have one sip. Everybody else is drinking. Why don't you drink too? Right. So, so much of it is in the way in which we answer the question. So I think that's number one. The other thing that is really important to consider is why are they asking this question? Because I think that can help us to understand where the motivation is coming from and also how we can then respond appropriately. So, the one thing to keep in mind is food so often in these situations represents something more than just the food, right? So I was just doing a coaching call for my Sweet Life Club a few days ago, and I was retelling this story of a friend of mine whose excuse me, whose aunt had been on Atkins diet, which is like similar, the precursor to keto, and she had done this for months, and she had lost like 20 pounds, and she was so proud of herself, and she was feeling so good. And then Thanksgiving happened, and Thanksgiving in their family was an occasion in which her husband was the primary cook. And so he had all these dishes that he did every year, and they had this very traditional Thanksgiving. And when it came time to have the meal, she had been worried about what she was going to say because she knew he was going to offer her the glazed yams, which she wasn't supposed to have. We got sugar, marshmallows, yam, all these things. And it got to the point where he was so offended that she wasn't eating his yams that she relented and had some. And that was the moment that broke her diet and that allowed her to fall back to eating the way she'd been before. She gained back all the weight and she was devastated. No wonder. And she did this because she didn't want to hurt his feelings. But if we can take a step back and ask ourselves, why was that so important to him, right? It's just yams. If you said to him, do you love your yams more than you love your wife? Of course, his answer is going to be, well, nuts. Of course, I love my wife more, usually. So, in that case, that would have been the answer. And so, what we need to understand is that there's something more at play here. And so, I think often the food represents one of two things. In a case like that, it can represent our way of showing affection or caring for the person. So I put all this work into this. I want you to acknowledge that, and I want you to acknowledge me by eating this. The other way that food comes into play so often, and the reason people want us to eat this food so badly, is because it represents the tradition of the situation, right? So I have to say, like, I grew up in a house where we never celebrated Thanksgiving, like, never. It wasn't even a thing. And then when I moved to Ontario and I met all these people who had grown up celebrating Thanksgiving, and I guess it's still, even to this day, is a bigger deal in the US than it is in Canada. But most of my friends now celebrate Thanksgiving. And of course, my husband grew up celebrating Thanksgiving. And so this concept of the green bean casserole, the mystic green bean casserole, came up in every discussion of Thanksgiving, as did the sweet potatoes in some form or another, usually with marshmallows on top of them. And so for people, that just represented a lovely memory of Thanksgiving. It's like if you think about the holiday, that's what comes to mind. So there are two things you can do in that situation. If it's the individual and it's become a personal thing for them, what we need to do is acknowledge what they're asking for without succumbing to giving in to the food. So if someone were to offer me their glazed ham casserole and say, you're really hurting my feelings, and it's starting to become like a personal situation, I would say, listen, I want you to know I love you. You mean the world to me, and I want to be able to share this moment with you and exchange our love for each other without me having to eat that sweet potato, those glazed sweet potatoes. And I want you to know that just because I'm not eating your glazed sweet potatoes, it doesn't mean I don't love you and care about you. And I hope you will understand. Now, clearly for me, excuse me, clearly for me, if that were my husband, I know my husband, I know he would understand. In fact, my husband would never make a glazed sweet potato casserole because he doesn't cook. But if it's someone that you love and you know well, generally that's gonna sort of jar them into realizing what they're doing, and that understanding that of course I love you more than these glazed yams, and of course I don't want you to eat something that's going to make you ill. Let's express our love, through words or hugs or kisses or whatever. The second thing is when it's a tradition and it's just part of the big meal. So the example I gave on the call we were having was my mom, who was a very, very excellent baker, but not such an excellent cook, had this one signature cake that she used to make that was called chiffon cake. And it's a very old fashioned kind of cake. You don't see it around much anymore. But a chiffon cake is a very high, light cake, sort of like a sponge cake with lots of eggs, and it's all beaten up. So it can be light and fluffy. And she was great at making the chiffon cake. And so this kind of became her signature cake, and her reputation with the chiffon cake preceded her everywhere. So any family event, she would make this chiffon cake. And every time we went to visit our cousins in Boston, she had to make the cake and wrap it up in tin foil so that it wouldn't get squished and bring it to the event. And so at our house, things like birthdays and holidays always, always had my mom's chiffon cake. Now, what's interesting is after my mom died, my sisters and I were talking about this chiffon cake, and we were like in hysterics because we all realized we didn't really like that chiffon cake too much. It's kind of flavorless and it has a texture of kind of cottony and just not very good. It's not a very good cake. But the feeling that we had in remembering these events was so warm, and it had such sentimental value because it represented our family being together and everybody appreciating my mom. And my mom was so proud, and her face was glowing. And so now if we wanted to reproduce that, or if I were in that situation today, I would not feel I had to eat the chiffon cake. What I would try to do is recreate that warm, fuzzy feeling through something else. And so that's something that you can do as well at these situations. You might acknowledge, I understand that the green bean casserole is a tradition and we always have it, but I really can't indulge in that this year. I don't want to become sick and ill by eating something that doesn't agree with my body. So maybe we can do something else together as a group so that we can all have really great memories of our time together, right? And so you might introduce, let's all go for a stroll around the neighborhood and admire all the decorations together, or let's play a game of Scrabble together, or whatever it is after dinner. So that then you have something new that is beginning to form a new tradition that you can all share in together. Because really what it boils down to is the food is meant for sharing. It's a source of sharing where everybody can partake together. And that's how you build those shared memories and those shared good feelings. And more often than not, that is what is motivating the pressure for you to eat that, because they want to share that experience with you. So if you're aware of that and you can find some other way to do that, that would be a really great way to alleviate that pressure on you. There are also very specific things that you can say, and I have a whole bunch of very specific responses and scripts in response to these questions. This is something that we have in our Sweet Life Club, excuse me, around Thanksgiving. And there's a mini course that I'm giving out as well so that you can have access to that really easily. It's called Easy as Pie, and it's a course that is a companion to the Sweet Life Thanksgiving cookbook. So when you join the Easy as Pie mini course, you get your own copy of the cookbook as well. And we go through different days of how to prepare for the holiday in terms of the food, in terms of what to say to people, and everything you need to be ready for that holiday, whether you're the cook or whether you're the guest. So that is going to be available in just a few days. I can't wait. So stay tuned for the Easy as Pie course. In the meantime, I hope you guys will continue to watch and ask your questions. Please put any questions you have down here in the comments. If you're not yet on my email list, you can go to rickiheller.com forward slash subscribe. And then you'll be the first to know about when the Easy as Pie course opens up as well, because this is just a mini course, 6 days to lead you into Thanksgiving so that you can be prepared, ready to go with foods that you can eat, and that green bean casserole and sweet potato casserole, both in formats that you can have on a candida diet, as well as pumpkin pie and chocolate pecan pie and roast and a whole bunch of other things that are related to Thanksgiving. But the course will also help you to do that prep and to prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, psychologically, so that you can interact with people in a way that's easy, relaxed, and also share all those foods and have those shared moments together. Okay, everybody, I hope this was helpful. If it was, please do, as I said, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you have any other questions at all. And I will see you guys, as always, next time. Take care. Bye.